What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft has just concluded. We are going to get to the Dolphins picks in a minute. Before I do that, I'm going to start by saying, one, that I probably have a different evaluation than what you will find from the other YouTubers and, probably from most of the media. So there's that. Also, I want to start off by saying that no matter what, this is definitely this is the make it or break it year for this organization, for Chris Grier, for Brian Flores, because Stephen Ross has historically, unless he just all of a sudden changes his MO and does things different and changes the way he does business, which I doubt is going to happen, especially because not only is he an old guy, probably stuck in his ways, but he's only getting older, and from my evaluation, only seems to be getting more desperate. So, we're gonna go through it. I think I have probably a different opinion. I'm gonna go through the entire first round and tell you all the picks, because it's not just the Dolphins picks that I want to focus on, but also players that they missed or passed on, as we went through. So, yeah, like I said, it's a make or break year. And whether, people like it or not, the expectation for this Dolphins team is to win 10 games, compete within the AFC East, and make it to the playoffs. If they don't do that, and especially if they do, regress as a team overall, if they don't win 10 games, if they were only to win, let's say, 8 games, if they went 8-9 over the course of the season, then, and if they don't meet, honestly, if I'm keeping it real, I feel as though if they don't meet those lofty expectations, if they don't have at least 10 wins, compete in the AFC East, and at least make it to the playoffs, I'm pretty sure that even will be enough for Stephen Ross to stick to his MO and fire them after approximately 3 to 3.5 years. That is his MO, 3 to 3.5 years. I personally don't think that the Dolphins are going to be a 10-win team. I don't think they were that good last year. I don't think their 10 wins was indicative of how good they are, because they got helped a lot. They got helped by the injuries and COVID, etc. The 49ers is one of the examples I use the most. Trey Lance is going to the 49ers picked Trey Lance over Mac Jones, and he's going into a good system. They have actually and to a good team that is actually built up around him, both on defense and on offense. Also, they could totally sit him and redshirt him for the first year behind Garoppolo. So he's going into a really good situation. That's not the case for the Dolphins after they strip them, and for Tua, after they strip themselves of, talent, experience, leadership, production, etc. And they haven't made any of the right choices since then. Their first 2 drafts have been underwhelming at best, really not very good. They've already cut 3 players. They've proven that they're not completely sold on Tua. They benched him a couple times last year. They were going to do the Deshaun Watson trade if it wasn't for, the legal issues. Not to mention, a new offensive coordinator. In fact, 2 of them. There's a lot of things that are going to make it difficult for this team to repeat that. And I don't think that they will. To me, the decisions that they made in this draft don't help. And look, I hope that they pick it up. I hope that the players that they still do have from their first 2 draft classes, really start to step up and take those leaps forward. I hope Tua does. And I've said for a while that I think he can be a good quarterback in this league, but I don't think that, as long as Stephen Ross for sure is the owner, I don't think that the Dolphins are ever going to get it right, because he's the root of the problem. And I just don't think they know how to make the right decisions. And anyway, so let's go ahead and get into the breakdown of the draft. Jacksonville obviously started off. And they were expected to take Trevor Lance, and they did so no surprise there. Jacksonville gets their quarterback. The New York Jets, and this has could potentially have major implications for the Dolphins as well, right? So the Dolphins, the Jets, as expected, took Zach Wilson number 2, especially after they traded, Sam Darnold to the Panthers, which, it was also expected that they were eventually going to get rid of him because he hasn't really done it, right? But anyway, and so, they have potentially their quarterback, right? And he is in college, he was really good, and he has a lot of potential, and he can do some things really well. And I think he could, he could give the Dolphins trouble. He certainly could give the Dolphins trouble. It is fair that he is also going to be, on a rebuilding team with a brand new head coach, but they do have Mekhi Becton to help secure his left side from last year's draft, which of course everybody praises but doesn't want to give Adam Gase credit for. But anyway, so they got him. That could cause potential problems for the Dolphins. And if he lives up to his potential, then that means then we have Josh Allen, who's already established, and the team to chase in the AFC East, the team to beat in the AFC East. If they do have their quarterback, because it's not a for sure thing yet that Tua is our franchise guy, right? He's still undersized. He's still injury prone. He didn't have a particularly great rookie season, and him and the team have a major hill to climb still, and a lot of areas in which they drastically need to improve. And look, overall, my fear for the Dolphins is that the defense is going to take a step backwards. First of all, they were not like, extreme world beaters. They were solid and had moments of dominance, but they've already gotten rid of several of the major pieces to that defense. They could be getting rid of more because they're still super strapped for cap space. And so, I fear and I think that the Dolphins defense is likely to take a step backwards, even from where they were last season. And I have to say, I don't see the offense really taking a step forward. I don't see, or at least not the large step forward that they need to take if they're going to want to stay competitive in the AFC East, as, the Bills really start to run away with it. And it looks like, the Jets and the Patriots could be priming themselves for, making themselves competitive. Now, we obviously have to wait and see how it plays out. Obviously, also throw in the little bit of context for me personally that I would never draft a quarterback in the first round, but the Jets may have got their guy. And he has a lot of skill and ability that does scare me as a twice-a-year division opponent. Let's move on, though. San Francisco ended up taking Trey Lance. They were linked to Mac Jones, but decided Trey Lance was the better prospect. And look, Trey Lance, a lot from what I've seen from a lot of the analysts and so on and so forth, Trey Lance actually has the highest upside, a lot of people believe, but just happens to be the rawest and has the least amount of experience. And I can see that from the tape that I've seen and the highlights I've seen of him and the commentary and coverage. I can see that. And he's fortunate because he's going to a place where he will have an opportunity to maximize and optimize that, especially if they do the smart thing and actually sit him for a season behind Jimmy Garoppolo so he can get adjusted to the NFL, learn the playbook, learn, get familiar with his teammates, gain some chemistry, etc. And then he could really take off in a year or two from now and be, a stellar quarterback in this league with a team that's already built around him. But if he was to go into the lineup, he has a team already built around him, a good offensive line with good weapons and a good defense when they're all healthy, right? Which they weren't last year and are expected to be this year. Moving on, and I'm sure Dolphins fans were reeling with the next two picks as Atlanta decided they wanted to take Kyle Pitts, the tight end, at number 4. Jamar Chase came off the board to the Bengals at number 5. And so look, for me, I was actually nervous and really hoping that they were going to do the smart thing and take Penei Sewell at number 6. And they did not do that. Because look, man, I'm telling you, this Dolphins offensive line is not settled. I don't trust Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, DJ Fluker. I don't trust Michael Dieter. I don't trust Solomon Kindley. They had an okay season last year, and the team performed much better than they should have because of factors that aren't in a normal season, right? And because of like COVID, and because of an ungodly amount of injuries that pitted them up against teams that were decimated. Again, the 49ers is the most common example, but even the Jets were decimated by injuries, on top of being a team that was in the process of rebuilding. So I was hoping they were going to do that, and even with Penei Sewell, they still would have a long way to go before becoming, a consistent and, reliable offensive line. And a lot of people are like, oh man, they could really have the potential to have Solomon Kindley, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, if they were to take Penei Sewell or, one of the top offensive linemen in the first round, him, and then Miners or one of the second round centers as their offensive line. Dude, that's not encouraging to me. 3 rookies from last year that all to me were reaches and are not really all that great. And then when you passed up on the top prospects last season, and then again pass up on the top prospects this draft rather, and then you want to throw in a couple more rookies with a brand new offensive system with 2 offensive coordinators, not to mention a left-handed quarterback, which makes it hard for a lot of people. Fortunately for them, Jalen Waddle, the receiver that they ended up taking, does have some familiarity with Tua, of course, because they played together. And since we are on Jalen Waddle, I do want to go ahead and get into his scouting report, though. Obviously, lots of different people do scouting reports. This is just one in particular, and it comes from Bleacher Report, so take that for what you will. But this is what they have to say. Jalen Waddle, this is his 2021. He's 5'9.5", so, and 180 pounds. Those are just facts, obviously. So he is a smaller receiver. It is also true that he did have a broken ankle last year, so that's something to have to keep an eye on. This regime seems to love to take players with concerning injury histories. Not to say that that is all that concerning, but as a wide receiver, it could be. So it is something to keep an eye on, and he is somewhat undersized. But here are his positives: very good balance and play strength for his size, competitive and consistently fights through contact to maintain course on his routes. Let's also take into consideration that this applies, this basic philosophy that I'm about to state applies to damn near every rookie that comes into the league. The positives that they have tend to get, lessened, minimized, or even sometimes negated because of the fact that they're rookies and learning the NFL, learning their playbooks, and also going up against the best of the best, right? Much tougher competition than what they saw even in college, even if they played against the best competition in college, right? Because the NFL is just another beast. So that's the case, and weaknesses tend to get exposed. So excellent athlete, can pull away from defenders on routes and is able to attack vertically within the time frame of the play. Top tier acceleration, lets him get onto cornerbacks' toes in a hurry. Consistently pulls away from defenders on intermediate routes like overs and sails. Above average overall hands and will flash good catch range while on the move. Flashes his body control and acceleration before and after the catch. Extremely dangerous with the ball in his hands. Consistently plays with excellent body control and lateral quickness to make defenders miss in small spaces. He's more than just a gadget player, but coordinators will have fun drawing up special packages for him. And that's another thing is he's really honestly projected mostly more in the slot from what I can tell, based on size, his abilities, so on and so forth. Scouting reports, especially on the NFL level. He has a very good feel for space and blocking, which makes him a true weapon from the backfield and on jet sweeps, but also in the screen game. He's has good feel for his route landmarks on routes he was asked to run. Looks like he is aware of getting his depth and doesn't get antsy trying to get open. Will throttle down in space and makes himself friendly to the quarterback. Overall, very tough and competitive player. Doesn't shy away from contact, is willing to scrap with defenders, which is good, but for an undersized guy, who has had at least 1 or 2 injuries, it can be concerning. Not to say it is or really should be right now, but that is something to think about. And for that and other reasons, I would not have taken him at this pick. Outstanding return ability on both kickoff return and punt return. Negatives: below average size, has to be strong because bigger cornerbacks will attempt to control him releasing off the line of scrimmage. That could be troubling for him in the NFL, especially for his rookie season as he gets adjusted. He's older for his class and may not have a ton of room for improvement. If that's true, that's also pretty concerning. Not just the fact that he's a little bit older and, that has its own concerns, but also because of the fact that if he's already, and I don't know that this is true, hopefully that's not the case, although the Dolphins coaching staff as it is currently, even though it's consistently changed over the past 3 years, so it's really hard to say, but they haven't been good at player development to this point. Hopefully that changes, but that could be concerning for him, because if he does struggle, but doesn't really have much better to get, well, then it could be a completely wasted pick, especially because that wide receiver room is full and they have a ton of guys with a range of skills. They have big guys like Devontae Parker, Allen Hurns, and Preston Williams. Big go up and get it guys. They have small gadget players or who can play in the slot like Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant. They also have Lynn Bowden Jr. and Malcolm Perry on the roster, right? And so they really just don't need wide receivers, but they do need offensive line help. And they passed up on Penei Sewell at the 6th spot, and then Penei Sewell ends up going 7th to the Lions. I think that's going to prove to be a big mistake. It wasn't really an area of need for this team. And I don't think at the end of the day, it's really even going to help your quarterback out, because I don't think this offensive line is going to be good enough to protect him or open up run lanes. And incidentally, the Dolphins might end up missing out on all the top running backs. Javonte Williams is still available, but Najee Harris and what's the other one? I'll get to it in a minute if I can't think of it. But the top 2 running backs went off the board in the 1st round. And so because of how they decided to do their picking, they may even, they missed out on pretty much all the top offensive line talent. And the edge rusher that they decided to take with 18, I thought they did need to take an edge rusher there, so I was glad they did that. However, they decided to take the one that has the biggest injury concerns. Even though he seems to have, and what everybody says is he has the most talent, that's cool, but that talent's not going to matter if he's not on the field because he gets injured. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And same basic philosophy with Jalen Waddle. If your quarterback can't ever fucking stand up in the pocket to throw the ball, he might not ever matter to you. Or if he doesn't have, if his ceiling's not much higher than what it is currently right now, that could be a problem, right? Or if he is, being an undersized guy, that could be a problem. So I don't really like that pick. I think it's going to be a mistake. And I think that so far, with the way that they're going about this draft, I think it's going to prove to be a 3rd straight year with an underwhelming draft class at best. We have to wait and see how they do day 2 and day 3, but their 1st round, where they're supposed to get the best talent, I think they fucked up day 1. Anyway, so moving on though, because like I said, Penei Sewell then did go 1 pick later to the Detroit Lions. J.C. Horn, one of the top corners in the draft, was taken by the Panthers at 8. Then Patrick Surtain, also one of the top corners. So after the Dolphins decide to take Waddle and pass over Penei Sewell, then they lose out, overall, and the overall draft, 2 of the top corners come off, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, so they can't take them. Devontae Smith then comes off to the Eagles at 10. J.C. Horn and Surtain were 8 and 9, excuse me. And the Eagles actually moved up to go get Devontae Smith with the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys had said that they were going to hold firm at 10, etc. They did end up trading it with the Eagles, funny enough. And then they took wide receiver Devontae Smith. And then the Bears moved up with the Giants, did a trade to take quarterback Justin Fields off the board, so that took off another quarterback at 11. Then the Dolphins lose out on one of the top linebacker prospects in Micah Parsons when the Cowboys took him at 12. Then they lose out on the next top offensive line prospect after Penei Sewell when Rashawn Slater goes to the Los Angeles Chargers at 13, which I predicted that, or I called it rather, a few picks before then, or a couple picks before then. I was like, watch, the Chargers are going to end up taking Rashawn Slater, and then they're going to miss out on two of the top fucking offensive line prospects. Then they missed out on the next offensive line prospect because the Jets then jumped up, traded with Minnesota to get the number 14th overall pick, one spot ahead of the Patriots, to pick Elijah Vera Tucker. So they got Elijah Vera Tucker now to pair up with Mekhi Becton, I assume on that left side, and Zach Wilson, potentially their, franchise quarterback. So the Jets, man, and especially as they get healthy and continue on with their draft, I actually really liked Gase's draft last year overall, not just the Mekhi Becton pick. So with that good draft, so far they're doing well in this draft. They could be scary for us this upcoming season. I know a lot of Dolphins fans will balk at that and be like, no, we're gonna kill the Jets, blah blah blah, they suck, they're rebuilding, he's a rookie quarterback, blah blah. And a lot of that is true, but I just don't think the Dolphins have taken as many steps forward as people seem to think. And I mean, to me, it's undeniable, but so far their first two drafts have been pretty bad. They've already cut 3 players. Their player evaluation is terrible. Their coach evaluation is terrible. Their player development has been terrible. And I really feel like the other teams in the division are going to really start taking leaps and bounds ahead of the Dolphins. And I don't think they're going to be a 10-win team this season. I think that they are going to regress. How much, I don't know. But they could end up seeing themselves in the basement of the AFC East. The Bills are going to be the presumptive leader. I think the Jets and the Patriots are going to give more of a fight this season than you might think. Especially because I would assume that the Patriots are going to get a lot of their defense back from the guys who opted out, right? A bunch of, like Patrick Chung and a bunch of those key guys that opted out, right? So their defense should drastically improve. With the 15th overall pick, they ended up taking Mac Jones, the Patriots. So they potentially have their guy. They also do still have Cam Newton, signed him to another 1-year deal. So look, there is potential that the Dolphins could end up in the basement of the AFC East this upcoming season. At 16, linebacker Zaven Collins went to the Cardinals. Then offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood went to the Raiders at 17, right before the Dolphins picked. I thought the Dolphins might trade the 18th pick. I thought that they were going to do more moving around. They did not, so I was wrong about that. I actually thought that they were going to move up with the 18th pick. They did not. They stayed at 18, and they picked the position that I thought they should pick. I would have gone offensive line with Penei Sewell at 6, and then I would have gone edge rusher at 18. Personally, Greg Rousseau probably would have been the decision for me. But they ended up picking the one player that I would not take. And everybody would say to me, but you're so crazy, dude, because he's so good. And they took Jalen Phillips out of Miami, right? The U. And so, look, it's not about the kid as a person. It's not about the kid's potential or his upside or his skill or his talent. It's the fact that he's had multiple injuries. It's the fact that a few of those, at least a couple of them, were concussions. He's not even to the NFL yet. He plays a violent position where your head tends to be in the mix of things. And it's not a risk that I would be willing to take, especially with concussions, man. I mean, I mentioned this in my live stream. Leading up to the draft, I watched a bunch of football movies, Gridiron Gang and what else did I watch? Whatever. I watched a couple of them. Draft Day, right? But I also watched Concussion. Dude, I wouldn't take the kid for his safety at all. I wouldn't take him in the first. I wouldn't take him in the seventh. I wouldn't take him as an undrafted free agent because the kid shouldn't be playing football if he's already had multiple concussions among other injuries before he gets to the most vicious and, hard-hitting version of the sport that he plays that's already an extremely physical sport against the toughest guys to play the sport. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But I hope he and the Dolphins prove me wrong. I hope he stays healthy, and I hope he has a bunch of sacks for the Dolphins this season. That would be great. Especially considering the fact that, like I said, they've already lost, multiple of the, staples from last year's defense and could potentially lose some other ones. They could lose Bobby McCain, Eric Rowe. They could end up losing or trading Byron Jones or Xavier Howard because they are still super strapped for cash. So I didn't like the picks that the Dolphins chose. And then when you add in all these other players that they missed out on, just real quick to back up, to go up the list, right? They missed out on Penei Sewell, right? And then a couple of the top corners. I don't think that would have been a top need. I wouldn't have picked them anyway, but there go a couple corners. Missed out on Micah Parsons, Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, right? And then later on, Jamin Davis, linebacker, goes to the Washington football team at 19. Kadarius Toney, wide receiver, to the Giants at 20. Kwity Paye, they missed out on him because he ends up going to the Colts at 21. Caleb Farley, one of the top corners in the draft, goes to the Titans at 22. That is risky because he has had a couple back surgeries for them, and he actually didn't get to go to the draft tonight because he caught COVID on top of it. So yay, I hope he's okay and remains that way. Another offensive lineman, one of the top offensive linemen, goes after that to the Vikings, Christian Darrisaw. Then Najee Harris goes to the Steelers at 24. Travis Etienne to the Jaguars at 25. So before the Dolphins even get to their second round picks, two of the top running backs are already off the list. And there is a substantial possibility that they could miss out on even Javonte Williams before they get to their pick in their first pick in the second round, unless they might have to move up though to get him. And I have the philosophy that I would never trade up. If I'm going to trade, I'm always going to trade down. It's just a philosophy that I would have. But people would be like, yeah, you should definitely go up and get him. And they do definitely need a running back. But you still do have Myles Gaskin and Ahmed. You still have other guys like Lynn Bowden Jr. and Malcolm Perry who can play there. You still have, who am I missing? I'm missing somebody else. Patrick Laird, I think, is still there. But they have a handful of guys and some guys that did show potential, including Gaskin, who got drafted by them. So, it's not a super high need. And so you add that in there, and I would not trade up, especially because then that means you have to trade away either draft capital and potential picks for this year or even for the future. And I just wouldn't do it because they're just not very good at picking to begin with, and they need all the ones they can get. So two of the running backs go off before they can even get to the second round to try and take one. 26, the Browns take Greg Newsome, cornerback. Then at 27, the Ravens take Rashad Bateman, wide receiver. Defensive end, Peyton Turner goes to the Saints at 28, so another top defensive end prospect. Eric Stokes, cornerback, goes to the Packers at 29. Then Greg Rousseau goes to the Bills at 30, which is devastating. And then Jason Owe, another edge, goes to the Baltimore Ravens at 31. Joe Tryon, edge, goes to the Bucks at 32. So, look, going into the second round, the Dolphins, as far as I'm concerned, still need offensive line help. Probably won't do much if they do anything. There's a possibility they may draft a center. And they certainly could use that help, but they will still have miles and miles to go before that offensive line is going to be a complete thing and, you know, a reliable wall in front of Tua and to open up holes for the run game. And they still do need a running back. I think that they still need help at safety. Cornerback is not super high on my list, but they will need some for the future at the very least. But even possibly for the here and now, if they do end up having to get rid of or trade, you know, Byron Jones or Xavier Howard. You know, and for me going into this draft, if I had to list the positions of need, for me it would have started with offensive line, defensive line with edge rusher as the focus, but also the interior defensive line does need help, especially with, you know, like Devon Godshaw leaving. You know, Davis does have some upside and potential and some intrigue, but one, he can't do it alone, and two, you know, I mean, he still has a long way to go as well before he really solidifies himself as that, you know, dominant force in the middle. So to me, it would have been offensive line. I would say, I mean, to me, the entire offensive line really needs work. I don't really trust any of the guys on the offensive line, if I'm being honest. So just offensive line in general. And then defensive line, edge rusher, pass rusher, priority, but also interior. After that, I would say probably, I think safety actually probably for me would be third, with then linebacker and running back tied for fourth. And then I would say probably corner at fifth, and let's say corner and tight end tied for fifth, and then wide receiver being the last, as far as the Dolphins' needs going into this. And again, man, you know, none of the weapons on the outside are going to do shit if your offensive line sucks and your quarterback gets hit a lot and your run game isn't good. So, look, I mean, nobody likes my perspective, really. Nobody thinks that, you know, the things that I have to say are correct. People call me negative, etc., etc. I hardly have any subscribers, especially compared to the other YouTubers. And hey, look, it's cool. It is what it is. So far, they've actually proven me overwhelmingly correct. I hope that they start to prove me wrong. And I hope that they actually do show that last year wasn't an aberration, that they weren't helped out by being one of the healthier teams in the league, that they weren't helped out by the COVID disaster, and that they are really actually taking steps forward. I hope that offensive line drastically improves. I hope Tua drastically improves. And I really hope that they do take the steps forward that they need to. And I hope that they do have a 10-win season. I hope that they do compete in the AFC for the division. And I hope that they do make it to the playoffs. Of course, I hope all of those things. But I have to keep it real. I don't see it happening. I see the Dolphins regressing. I think that the defense is going to take a step backwards at the end of the day. I don't think that the offense is going to take as big a step forward as they need to and as we would want them to. I don't think the offensive line is all that good or will be that good. And so, and you know, on top of that, they're not going to have the same handicaps that they did last year because of COVID and injuries and so on. So I don't think that they're going to be a 10-win team, and I think that they will regress. If that happens, I can virtually guarantee you that either in the offseason, I would say most likely in the upcoming offseason after this year, that the Dolphins will, or that Stephen Ross will end up firing Grier and Flores. I think this time around he will not do the I'm going to fire the GM but not the coach, or fire the coach but not the GM. I think he's going to fire both. I think he's getting old. I think he's getting desperate. And I think that he will stick to his MO. And after about 3 to 3.5 years of a regime, of a front office, of a coaching staff, he will hit the reset button and fire both of them. And I think that that is the most likely scenario to happen. Because I also think that the most likely scenario is that the Dolphins do regress this year, and then Stephen Ross flips his lid, gets impatient, and then fires those guys. But to be clear, again, and this is how I'll wrap it, this is a make it or break it year for this Dolphins regime. For the front office that consists of Chris Grier, Marvin Allen, and Reggie McKenzie, and the coaching staff, which, you know, is Brian Flores. Obviously, there's the coordinators and all the assistants, but normally when you fire a coach and then bring in a new one, they pretty much bring in, I mean, not always and not in full, but they bring in their guys, right? And so, and people that they like. So, there's likely to be more changeover on the coaching staff. And so if they don't win 10 games this year, if they don't make it to the playoffs, especially with an expanded playoff field, especially with an additional game to the regular season calendar, and the Dolphins having an additional home game because of it, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, man, the expectations, I think, are set way too high, and I think people are going to be very disappointed. And mark my words, if they are, and if they regress, then they will be fired this offseason, or somewhere in the middle of the following season at the absolute latest, if Stephen Ross was to say, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a chance here. I'll give you guys one more draft and at least some of the next season to see if you guys could turn it around. I don't think he would do that. I don't think he would waste all that time and in fact, a full draft. I think that it's this year. I think that this is the make it or break it year. If they do not succeed, if they do not compete in the division, if they do not have 10 plus wins and make it to the playoffs, I just don't see them sticking around, and I see Stephen Ross sticking to his MO and firing them. So I hope they prove me wrong. I want them to prove me wrong, but they have to do it. They can't rest on their laurels. They can't just use last year as a reason why it's just going to happen. They have to prove it. And so far, they haven't really done all that great of a job when you look at the entirety of the picture, when you look at the whole picture. So yeah, that's what I got for you guys. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.